Unknown, but Debbie, at the age of 15, was introduced into the sex trafficking business. Her best friend one day abruptly told her to come outside, where all of a sudden she was kidnapped into a car with her hands tied and taken to an apartment where she was suddenly gang raped by multiple older men. From there on, Debbie was physically, verbally, and sexually abused and became a prostitute. Debbie's captors forced her to have sex with at least 50 men each night, and all of the money she earned went to her pimps. Debbie never tried to escape for the sake of her family's safety, but after the police rescued her, she was able to share her story. Similarly to Debbie, many other girls, even younger than her, are constantly forced into the sex trafficking industry. They are often lured in by false advertising and fantasies created by pimps in order to control them. The pimps then force the young women or men to have sex with Johns, men who play to have sex with these women. It is actually a wretched thing that it still occurs in the United States because every year millions of women, men, and children are trafficked in countries around the world, including the United States. It is estimated that human trafficking generates many billions of dollars of profits in the most profitable form of transnational crime. As a society, we must stop the harboring and recruiting of young men and women in the U.S. as sex slaves so that the U.S. could create recreational programs and enforce their police unit in order to stop sex trafficking. Although some may say it is not possible to really make a change, in reality the government is constantly reinforcing their police force to help the victims and is creating recreational programs as well. Opponents may argue that sex trafficking is like racism. It will never end because it's a business used to oppress women and men, in this case, instead of blacks. The San Francisco Chronicle stated that sex trafficking is now an $8 billion international business, with San Francisco among its largest commercial centers. Sex trafficking has become a business since the pimps make money off of the young girls or boys who they put onto the streets. The money never goes to the victims, even if it's their body that is being advertised, sold, and exploited. Pimps make their living through the sex trafficking of other people because it's such a demand. Sex trafficking still continues because people in America have a high demand for sexual pleasure, and the easiest way to please themselves is to have forced sex with innocent victims. However, this industry takes a huge toll on the victims. Many of them are abused mentally and physically, just like Debbie, and are branded the way a pimp would mark his property and control the victim through a tattoo of their name or a significant symbol. Since sex trafficking is becoming more apparent in the U.S., the Obama Justice Department has elevated human trafficking as a major civil rights issue. The administration has encouraged the creation of local and federal task forces around the country to deal with this growing concern. The government is actually working towards fixing this issue of sex trafficking because it impacts the victims' lives, since often sex trafficking is a form of prostitution, and it causes the victims to be arrested since prostitution is illegal. The victim then, after being saved from their current situation, has a history of charges and finds it hard to get back to normal life or finding a job, similarly to when one comes out of jail. This is where recreational programs comes into play to help the victims get back to their normal life. The government is really working to help people get out of this business. So although some may say that it is a booming business, it affects many people and ruins oneself. As I stated above, sex trafficking can impact the victims deeply. Many girls and boys mainly become involved either because a family member sold them to a pimp in exchange for money, or usually they're tricked and manipulated into believing that they'll have a better life. But at the same time, some may have just had the misfortune of not having a great childhood, so they've become vulnerable. This is how their lives often take a major spiral downward, and how many of them become addicted to drugs or mistreatment. Sex trafficking is a modern form of slavery, and it shouldn't be happening still in 2016. It only occurs because Americans indulge in a culture that glamorizes pimping and prostitution. As a solution, we as Americans should move away from this idea and should actually create a culture that appreciates everyone and glamorizes hard work and respect rather than pimping and easy money. We as a community must target the minor problems firstly in order to get to the larger ones. To conclude, sex trafficking should no longer be occurring for the simple fact that it oppresses men and women especially. It's like taking a step backwards into racism. sex trafficking makes the victims vulnerable than they already are and dehumanizes women, especially since men are forcing them to do sexual acts without their consent. Victims experience trauma and they are not actually living when they are forced to do these things. It is ethically wrong to do this to people, actual people. To solve this problem, people could raise awareness or even change their outlook on society too. With this, we could change how the world perceives gender roles and actually stop sexism because it is a very present factor in sex trafficking. I ask you all today, especially to all the women in the room, do you really want to feel dehumanized and powerless forever and just pass your days under a patriarchal society? Or do you want to live in a world where women aren't just characterized by their sexuality or all the things they can do to arouse a man? Remember, this is your time now. It is up to you to choose how you want to spend it. Thank you.
Español. Alana, smile. Sorry, just kept going.